From bridges structure to blood vessels, why strain rate determines survival. Number 1364, VMT Sharp 705, September 23, 2025. Gerald C. Shu, EclaireMD Foundation. Category, Methodology, Why strain rate matters, from engineering materials to human organs. The strain, or disease condition, change rate with respect to time, often called the strain rate, is fundamental in both engineering materials and biomedical organs. When studying dynamic plastic behavior, although these two fields seem unrelated, they share the same principle: the speed at which stress, or influential factor, is applied, often determines whether a system adapts, accumulates damage, or fails catastrophically. 1. Engineering materials. Definition: strain rate is how quickly deformation occurs over time. Why it matters: metals, composites, and other structural materials behave very differently under slow loading compared with rapid loading. Low strain rates, static loading, gradual deformation, quasi-static plastic flow. High strain rates, explosions, crashes, materials harden significantly, strain rate sensitivity, resisting deformation more strongly. Consequences: determines how much energy a structure can absorb, affects whether failure is ductile stretching, buckling, or brittle fracture, forms the basis for designing safer cars, ships, aircraft, and protective structures. 2. Biomedical organs and tissues. Human organs, vessels, and tissues also behave differently under different strain rates. Output disease change rates, slow stresses, gradual weight gain, long glucose waves, chronic hypertension, cause cumulative, plastic-like damage such as vascular calcification, stiffening, and organ remodeling. Fast stresses, sudden hypertension surge, acute heart attack, stroke trigger, can rupture cerebral microvessels or cause immediate catastrophic failure. Example: blood vessels stiffened by years of low-frequency glucose waves. Chronic hyperglycemia or chronic hypertension are more vulnerable to rupture when exposed to a sudden high-frequency spike, such as an acute BP surge. Clinical lesson: the difference between reversible stress, short, low damage, and irreversible damage, calcification, fibrosis, explains why prevention must address not only average values but also different waveforms. Low-frequency glucose wave versus high-frequency blood pressure wave, and sudden surges, high amplitude of wave. 3. Shared principle. In engineering, strain rate governs crashworthiness and survival of structures. In medicine, it governs whether organs can adapt, compensate, or collapse under stress. In both, it is not only the magnitude of stress, but also its speed and frequency that determine long-term outcomes. 4. Case study: my recent cerebral microvessels, June 21, 2025. The first 20 years of my type 2 diabetes, progressive damage. For 2 decades of uncontrolled diabetes, from 1990 to 2010, my average glucose remained high, hemoglobin A1C at 8% to 14%, producing long-term low-frequency glucose waves with frequent high amplitudes. These gradually damaged my cerebral microvessels, creating vessel calcification and stiffness. In engineering terms, this is like repeated heavy trucks crossing a bridge deck. Each load leaves a footprint, and over time, cracks accumulate until permanent deformation or collapse sets in. The following 15 years, tight control after 2010. Since 2010, strict lifestyle control reduced new glucose stress on my vessels. This did not reverse my calcified vessels, but it slowed further deterioration. In structural terms, reducing truck loads does not erase existing minor cracks, but it extends service life and delays collapse. My health outcome. On June 21, 2025, a sudden blood pressure surge to 175 mm of mercury, triggered by emotional stress during a real estate dispute, caused a hemorrhagic stroke in the pons area of my brain. The weakened, calcified vessels could not withstand the acute BP stress. This phenomenon demonstrates the tight relationship between psychological stress and pathophysiological strain. It was like a compromised bridge failing under another suddenly unexpected truckload, flood surge, or hurricane strike. 5. Bridge analogy for my viscoplastic damage. A bridge faces 2 very different stressors. 5.1. Truck loads on the deck. Daily repetitive loads deform the bridge gradually. Over time, cracks and permanent footprints develop. This parallels chronic stressors such as high glucose, obesity, poor sleep, emotional stress, or unhealthy diet. 5.2. River waters around the piers. Constant flow erodes vertical bridge supports. A sudden strong river flood can destabilize the structure instantly. This parallels acute events such as a sudden blood pressure spikes, emotional surges, or stress crises. Together, deck and piers represent human organs and blood vessels. Chronic loads resemble long-term metabolic stress. Acute river floods or strong hurricanes resemble sudden blood vascular stress. The viscoplastic lesson is the same: long-term damage accumulates nonlinearly, sometimes reversible early on, but eventually becoming permanent and leading to collapse if not prevented. 6. The lesson: calcification of cerebral microvessels, formed mainly in the first 20 years of my poorly controlled diabetes, from 1990 to 2010. The next 15 years of strict lifestyle control, from 2010 to 2025, did not reverse my vessel damage totally, but slowed progression. My disciplined lifestyle essentially bought me time, delaying stroke and extending survival. As in engineering, early prevention, both at the design and construction phases, is essential. Once irreversible damage footprints appear, no later control can fully restore the system. 7. Closing reflection. Dynamic plastic behavior is a universal principle of physics. Whether in steel beams, concrete bridges, or human arteries, the outcome depends not just on how much stress is applied, but on how quickly, how often, and how long. The bridge analogy helps us see why. Heavy daily truck traffic weakens a deck. Floodwaters around piers or hurricanes can suddenly bring down a structure. Chronic metabolic stress from diabetes and acute hypertension surges together, shape the fate of our organs. The message is simple but powerful: prevention must begin early, control must be consistent, and maintaining a sense of humor, a positive attitude, and firm determination is essential to continue the journey of life. Visualizing the principle through two diagrams. The following two diagrams illustrate the link between engineering plasticity and biomedical footprints. First diagram of strain over time: a slow rise, chronic stress, glucose waves, truck loads. An abrupt rise represents acute stress, BP surge, flood or hurricane. Both stresses damage systems, but differently. Chronic stress builds permanent footprints. Acute stress causes immediate failure. Second diagram of my health case. First 20 years of diabetes. Red line, uncontrolled glucose damaged microvessels, like heavy traffic cracking a bridge. Next 15 years. Green line, strict control slowed progression, like reduced traffic, delaying bridge damage. Blue line, stroke in 2025, final collapse, triggered by acute hypertension, like a bridge failing under sudden overload from flood or hurricane. Two graphic diagrams. Together, these two figures show why strain rate is as critical in medicine as in engineering. Speed and frequency of stress determine the trajectory from adaptation, to damage, to collapse. Disclaimer: this content is for educational reference only and not medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be edited or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. Shue.